And so what we're doing is we're trying to understand why we have a particular pattern here. And that particular pattern that I notice is we've got the Appalachian Mountains. The Appalachian Mountains come right through here, right? And so the Appalachian Mountains, we've got kind of this warm, moist condition. Blue means more rain. But then over here on the other side, it's a little bit drier. And so we're trying to figure out why do we have rain over here, precipitation on one side of the Appalachians, and then less precipitation on the other side of the Appalachians. And the key thing to grasp here is our weather, for the most part, goes this way. Our weather goes from west to east. And so especially from down here, things come up from the south and from the west. That's why the lovely Angela Buckman, she's back on the air, although she's not as good as she used to be. Anyway, she always is looking over here when she's describing what our forecast in Indiana is going to be going forward, because weather moves west to east. And so if we go back, we're trying to figure out why on the west side of the Appalachians it's wet and on the east side it's dry. And so we go back to our good friend orographic precipitation. So I have a warm, moist air mass. Now, how do I get a warm, moist air mass in this particular area of the country? Once again, look at what we have here. We've got a big old Gulf of Mexico. And that Gulf of Mexico supplies a lot of warm, moist air that gets kind of forced up right to the Appalachians, right up the western side of the Appalachians. And so what ends up happening is we get a little bit of that warm, moist air rising. If we can get warm, moist air to rise, eventually it's going to get to a cooler place. It's going to get a higher elevation. It's going to cool, condense, and fall back down as rain. And so subsequently we get some sides of the mountains that get a ton of rain, but that air continues on. It continues to push on to the east, and as it pushes on, it essentially spews all of its precipitation, spews all of its moisture. And so the Smoky Mountains are right smack dab, right in the middle of this area right through here. And so the Smoky Mountains, and you can see that gray right through here, a good amount of rain. And so the Smoky Mountains, they're smoky not because there's a lot of fires there, not because there's a lot of people smoking cigarettes, not because there's a lot of people starting fires there. They're smoky because they appear smoky because there's always a mist, especially at the top of the Smoky Mountains. That mist is essentially, is essentially orographic precipitation. Warm, moist air, eventually, you don't see it when you're there at the bottom of the mountain, but when you go to the top, you can actually see that warm, moist air rise, and actually clouds form. And that clouds form, providing this mist that constantly hovers at the top of the Smoky Mountains, which gives them that name of the Smoky Mountains because of that mist. It's not smoke, it's kind of a haze.